Well, good morning. It's Tuesday, and we're going to read Revelation to John 8 1 through 5. When the Lamb opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. Then I saw the seven angels who stand before God, and seven trumpets were given to them. And another angel came and stood at the altar with a golden censer. And he was given much incense to offer with the prayers of all the saints on the golden altar before the throne. And the smoke of the incense with the prayers of the saints rose before God from the hand of the angel. Then the angel took the censer and filled it with fire from the altar and threw it on the earth. And there were peals of thunder, rumblings, flashes of lightning, and an earthquake. My goodness. Okay, the strange thing about this passage, of a lot of strange things there, but the strangest thing of all is the silence in heaven for half an hour. What? Well, as it turns out, in the Talmud, it teaches that the angels in heaven sing all night. But in the daytime, they're quiet so that God can hear the prayers and the praises of God's people on the earth. So there's silence for half an hour, and then it starts talking about prayer. Now, in the scripture, prayer is like incense. You know, the incense rises up before God, so do the prayers. And if you've ever been anywhere where they use real incense, and I'm not talking about the 29-cent stuff you buy at the head shops, but the really good incense in some churches use, you can smell it for days. It gets in your clothes, and you just keep smelling it and smelling it. And sometimes you sniff, and all of a sudden you can smell it again. It stays with you, just as these prayers stay with God, I think. And so incense is a good image for prayer. And this angel has got one of those censers, which is a 3 or 4 chains, and there's a vessel at the bottom that holds the incense, and it's burning, and he's swinging it around, and smoke is going everywhere. Then he fills it with fire and throws it down on the earth, and there are all these calamities, and we'll get to them in the next few days. But so what we hear at this point is a sort of symbolic representation of our prayers coming up as incense before God. And we ought to be praying people. We ought to pray about things big and small. Some people think, well, this is too routine to bother God with. I won't pray about that. Or they think, well, this is a big calamity, but it's my fault and I'm not going to pray about it. Or this is a big deal, but what can God do that's not already being done? And they won't pray about it. And the scripture says pray about everything and kind of like see what happens, because sometimes God will act. Sometimes God doesn't seem to do anything, but you're changed by the praying, and by the prayers. And sometimes it's kind of a in between, sort of you change some and you begin to see things in a different way. And that's good, and that's important too. So prayer is important, and we shouldn't forsake it or ignore it, but we should pray. Now, Paul says pray constantly, and that may be much for some of you. For some of us, praying constantly is like, oh man, I got to pray all the time. I can barely pray half an hour. But it's a good thing. And my recommendation has always been start with something small that you give thanks for. I give thanks for this chair, and for the softness and the padding on this chair, and for the heat in the office, and for the fact that I've got an office and it's closed in and the rain can't blow in. And so you just keep thinking of more and more things to pray about as you go. That's important because it sort of keeps us focused, as it were, on God and on things that are important. As some people will put every kind of nonsense on the prayer chain, and everybody else is like, oh, prayers, I'm praying for you, prayers coming at you. we're not supposed to pray. We're not supposed to direct our prayers at somebody else. We're supposed to pray for them to God. And that sounds like semantics, but it just bothers me when people say, "Oh, my prayers are coming at you." I know that's not what they mean, but it's what they're saying, and let's use English correctly, folks. Okay, so you don't have to pray in good English. You don't have to pray in English at all. I remember a story of that Will Willimon told. He was at a conference, and somebody was up there praying the invocation, and they were going on and mentioning everything in the entire Bible, and people were falling asleep. And Walter Brueggemann was sitting next to him, and Brueggemann said, "Hey, God, it's me, Walt. Help." And that sounds like something Brueggemann would have said and would have done. And so, we don't have to have big fancy phrases with a lot of semicolons. We can just say, "Help," and God gets it. So I hope that you're having a good day, and I hope that you don't have to pray to God for help. But if you do, God will be there and it will help you. So, hang on to your hat. And we will see you tomorrow.